Hello everyone and welcome back to another Returnal related video. So this time we'll be speaking about the patch that came out back way back in May, and it was the patch 3.03, and it was to do with the rebalancing the tower and unfortunately reset the leaderboard as a result. So yeah, it was kind of screwed us over slightly. So got another days that you can carry up to 10 shields as well. I know it's been a while, however, looking at YouTube and just generally, I don't think I couldn't really see anyone who's done a follow-up video since the tower was released. So I thought I'd do a follow-up guide. So I wanted to expand on the one that I released back in April, which if you haven't originally checked out, I will drop a link to that in the description below, and which now has over 1,500 views. So I just want to say thank you. I do appreciate everyone who has watched it, who's liked it, and has subscribed as a result. And it's really also good to see in the comments below to see that people have actually picked up from this video, and it's actually helped them to attain bigger scores, and they've gone on to get new personal bests, and it's just really good to see that it's helping people, and that's the main goal, and that's the main goal for this video as well. So again, you know, these videos are quite hard to make, so it's just good to see that there are people out there that are reaping the benefits of this as well. So yeah, that's it's really good to see that. Now I've condensed this video into 3 sections, which is going to cover basic, intermediate, and advanced. So with basic being the things that you should be doing pretty much every single time you run into the tower, intermediate related discussions, and finally we will get onto advanced. And we also have a bonus round, people. So strap in, as we're going to be talking about some more tips and guides to help you on your way to the ascension to the top. So as mentioned at the beginning, if it's your first time, if you haven't watched any previous videos, I'll just go through the basic flow of the tower. So it is obviously just getting in, getting out, and surviving, and getting as far as you can pretty much. Without getting hit, without getting dying, without the one-shot bollocks or whatever it is people are dying from now. If it's the red rings, the purple lasers, whatever nonsense is getting thrown at you. But yeah, the basic flow of the tower is just kill, get out, and see how far you go. Get to teleport as fast as possible. Don't worry about other weapons. Just get your weapon when it comes to a chest. Again, I won't talk about much of the multiplier or anything like that, because again, this is, you know, we're covering topics that haven't been covered on the previous video. But again, if you want to see that, I'll talk about the multiplier there and everything else, so you can check that out. Yeah, that's generally down to a T what the tower's about, is just moving from floor to floor, room to room, defeating Algos. That is like down to the, you know, the core of the tower. That is basically what it's all about, staying alive. So you must have a basic strategy going into the tower. Something, you know, you need an action plan. So let's say, you know, you're a beginner, you know, I think your main goal is just to survive as long as possible and see how far you can go. Like your mid-range, it's probably like implementing that, and also different plans of action, such as, you know, implementing a couple of air melees, using better weapons and all that kind of jazz. Whereas you're more advanced, you know, you're looking at a very complex battle plan where it's like, right, I'm going to do air melees at the beginning, not get hit, to provide that adrenaline, to provide more points, faster weapons. And, you know, these runs can go on for like 5-6 hours. They might have to put the PlayStation in rest mode, do it another day, and then it's like, right, how do I keep that momentum? So as you can see, there's a different range of plans depending on your skill level, and that's fine. Depending if you're in the bottom, middle, or top, you've got to have at least a basic outline, which will lay the foundations for your runs moving forward, and you'll probably tweak them. So for instance, mine used to be just air melees the first 3 phases and then just try to survive the rest. Now it's tweaked where it's, because I you know, because I watch other Returnal players and I pick up different strategies which I would advise, as well as watching videos. So yeah, mine used to be that, and then I changed it to using an underpowered gun for the first like 5-6 phases, concentrating melee kills, adrenaline, multiplier. From like phase 5 and 6 onwards, just try to survive. So you'll have a basic like action plan, but you need to have one at least. Like you need to have at least the bare minimum, and then, you know, tweak it and change it for, like, say, for your skill level or your range. But I think it is very important, and how it's going to really help you provide a better score moving forward. But I would say, yeah, it's one of the core basics in the tower. So I would look into it, definitely outline an action plan moving forward. So Returnal's a great game, no doubt, no doubt. We all love it. This is why we're here. This is why we continue playing it long after the story, long after we don't know what the hell is going on with Celine. Is she alive, dead, all this Greek mythology? That's a completely different video. I'm not even going to delve into that right now. However, what we are going to speak about is how frustrating the game can be a little bit, and how it has that effect on us. And yeah, so I think that a lot of times I like to play Returnal because it's good stress relief, but I also find it adds a lot of stress on I didn't want in the first place. Like, for instance, I was like doing 2 runs the other day, and I got melee cooldown at like one after the other. So I did 1 run and I ended that because I got melee cooldown, and I started a new run and I got melee cooldown. And the bitch about it is that you've got to wait until phase 4 to get it, which is always like an hour and a bit, like an hour just to get there. But I would say, like, just take a break from the game from time to time as well, like a day or 2 or whatever, like a week, however you need to go into rehab for. But yeah, it can be quite frustrating, and sometimes things don't go your way with the game, and, you know, you die stupid ways, and it's just very frustrating, especially with the new bullshit mechanics of the one shot and all this new stuff they've done with the Severed, and they've buffed them up. But yeah, we've just got to learn what to deal with it, and I would just say just walk away from the game, just play something else, and also just try not to play it tired. I see a lot of people recently, I don't know why, just playing the game when they're like very tired, and it's like, it's not the game you should be playing when you're tired, or when you've powered down from the day that you've been at work. So I would suggest playing something else, because you'll just have bad runs. And I think Returnal is one of the games where I've really got to be in the mood for it. Like, I've got to have the energy, I've got to have the motivation to play it, because especially for long runs, like, you know, I think the longest run I've been on was probably for like 5 hours to get the 138 mil that I'm on now. I don't really use the timer, but I'm assuming it's like 500 a bit hours. It was over the course of 2 days. I had to put my PS5 in rest mode, but yeah, it can be quite draining, it can be quite grueling. So if you're having bad runs, etc., if it's getting to you, just take a break, come back to it, and revitalize yourself, and go again. So I think the map is probably one of the most underutilized features especially for the tower. Because I get why people don't use it, because obviously you've got billion and million of things rushing at you on the screen, like lasers and orbs and all that kind of jazz. So I get why players don't use it. It's high time we start utilizing the map. I think it's a very basic feature in the game, and it could go a long way. I think for a lot of the big players, you know, don't tend to use it probably because they know the rooms off by heart. I think for, you know, at least for beginners to intermediates, I think it's a good place to start, is using the map to know where you are, especially for those kind of like mazy rooms, or the rooms where there's like gaps in the floors and, you know, it's easy to fall. I think it's just good to use it, see where your enemies are as well. That's always a good thing. So when you got a big room, you can kind of like map where you're going to go, where the enemies are, all that kind of jazz. And when things are a little bit quiet, you can use it to, you know, to plot your next route. So I think using the map is going to help you in the long run. Obviously, as you progress further, you should have like photographic memory of every single room. However, I still think you should use it during your runs, because, like I say, it's just such a, I mean, you can put the size of the map from, I'm pretty sure you can change it from small, medium to large. I guess you kind of sometimes need a third eye to keep tracking it. Like say if you maximize the view, it should be easier to track. I would highly recommend start using it as well, so you know you don't fall off map, so you can, you know, you can keep an eye on where the enemies are, so they don't creep up behind you or to your left, your right, etc. So it is such a basic feature for the game gives us, but I think it is very underutilized by a lot of players. I think only for myself, I've only just started really concentrating on it a little bit. I mean, like I say, I think it's more overconfidence that I know the, you know, the map layouts, etc., but it's still useful for, you know, enemy tracking and like I say, especially in big rooms. So I would definitely start using it if you haven't already. Now this is such a basic function that I'm going to be saying and telling you in a minute. So ABM is basically always be moving, which is what you should be doing. I mean, Returnal is fast and furious. There are enemies that are shooting laser beams faster than the speed of light. You should always, always, always be on the move. You should never really be stopping or anything. You should always be, you know, circling the map and dodging or shooting and making sure that you're sustaining the multiplier at all times. And yeah, I watch, you know, some people, and it's just a walking simulator, and I'm like, go play Death Stranding, man. One of the ways you can tackle this, though, jokes aside, is that you can go to your settings and have always running on, and I have this, and I think a lot of people do as well, because it just saves time. It just gets you where you need to go faster, and it's such an easy thing to do. It takes literally 2 seconds to tweak that in your settings. It's easier when you're moving to, obviously you're harder to hit as well, even though some of the attacks can track you. But yeah, so when you're running around, it's easy to track where everything is, to track where enemies are, and it's easy to track where projectiles are coming from. Whereas you're standing still, there's, you know, a massive case you could be blindsided as well. Always keep an eye out for the indicator as well, because the game does give you an indicator where like the lasers are coming from, the rings in which direction, so always keep an eye on that, and it'll be easy to dodge them as well. It's such a big thing to have in the tower as well, you know, moving forward. So yeah, please implement that into your runs. So now that we've covered the basics, and I'll be honest, the 4 topics that we covered should be in your repertoire already. So now we're going to change gear. We're going to speak about tactics that'll really take you to the next level. Again, these 4 aren't too complex, hence why it's intermediate. So it shouldn't take you long to really get used to. It's how you're doing it and how to better implement it in the tower. If you're doing some of them, that's fair enough. If you're not, strap in. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about the best consumables to use. So I'm going to go for each one that you can get in the tower, because there are some in the story that you can't actually get in the tower. If you're new to it, just be aware of that as well. So the first one we're going to speak about is the extermination sphere. Benefit is to detach all parasites on the player. Now, this is only really beneficial if you have the progenitor egg. So the strategy behind it is that from, like, let's say you've got 1 slot for shields, 1 slot for disgorgers, and another slot for the extermination sphere. You can use that as like a last resort, like a get out of jail free card. So this is only something I have just learned recently from another player. Is that, let's say you've spent all your shields because you've been hit. Let's say you're on like your health bar's on red. You could use this to detach the parasites, and with obviously the egg, gain some health as well. So it's something to think about, and it's, like I say, it's like a last resort, as it were. The next one, which is most common, is the large heals. For myself anyway, shields in 1 slot, and then I do turrets and heals, and then after like phase 7 I'll start using disgorgers and heals. You can get the nullification sphere in the tower, but obviously just make you aware it doesn't cure the permanent malfunctions that Algos gives you, just to, just to make you aware. I try to use it like in my first couple of runs, and I was just like, oh, okay. But if you do get hit by a malfunction, which Algos can give you, or certain enemies can give you, you can either do the what's required, or you can just use the sphere. You can also use, aside from the large shields, the most common one you're going to find are shield vials. So shield vials are the most common one. You'll pick it up in certain safe spaces, certain safe rooms. You can buy them at shops as well. Now, obviously, the strategy is different. So you, for me, I carry 5, so I'll collect 5 shields, and then any extra I find along the way I will pop, and then I'll just use resin shields, because I try to make sure that I have 5 as backup. I try to have 3 minimum, 5 maximum. Sometimes obviously it doesn't work out like that, but for me, that's my own personal strategy. I'll collect 5, and any extra I'll just use alongside the resin, because I think I'd rather have the resin shield doing the business, and the adrenaline shield for that matter, and use the 5 as backup just in case. So when I do come to like tricky rooms, I'll maybe pop like an extra one just in case, just so I'm not thinking about popping shields whilst I'm in the heat at the moment, so to speak. The other thing as well to protect as well as yourself, or Celine should I say, is to protect your adrenaline. So let's say, you know, your adrenaline shield's gone, your resin shield's gone. To protect the adrenaline, I would pop a shield. Now, I wasn't too fussed about protecting my adrenaline, but I went back and I saw the benefits, and it completely changed my perspective on that. So at level 1 for adrenaline, you get a better reload. Level 2, you get to see enemies through wall. Level 3, you get enhanced melee attack, so that means the cooldown time's reduced, which is great. Level 4, your proficiency rate goes up by 50%, which is very useful to get you quicker to level 45 to get those better weapons. And lastly, you get a 50% increase for the number of obolites that you receive from defeating enemies, and it's not a benefit listed through the stack, but a benefit for the tower by being on level 5 is that you also get more points for being on level 5 adrenaline. So it's worthwhile protecting it from time to time as well, just because the benefits are just absolutely monumental, and obviously you gain a better score as well. So it's something to think about, and I hope those benefits again change your strategy and help you towards better progress in the future. So we can't speak about consumables without speaking about the super consumables that they've released specifically for the tower. There's 4 variations, which we're going to speak about, like we have been doing all video long, the worst to the best and how you should be using them. So I'm just going to very quickly go through these. So the first one is the quad swarm. So this one primarily is used for mobs, as you can see, just because of its wide range. It's not really useful for like one enemy. It's really good for like mobs of like bats or robots, etc., and just, you know, really quickly clearing out the room. So the next one is the blight wave, which is really good for honing in on specific enemies, especially like Algos or like a malformed, and then just, I think it's got tracking as well, so it's really useful. These two are really OP. So you've got Absolution, and the best way to use Absolution is to charge it up. It does take a second, but it's worth it for the damage output. It can be really OP, again, for clearing out rooms or for taking out a big boss. And the last one we can speak about, my personal favourite, is the Dire Beam. Just because, again, you can kind of select where you want to go. The damage output is absolutely phenomenal, especially in the higher stages. Even when you reach to like double-digit phases, it's still a lifesaver. With these, I personally just stack them. I don't use them for Algos. I've probably said it once or twice before, but your gun, when you do get to Algos, yeah, should definitely be enough to kill him. So definitely stack these for like a get out of jail free card. So when you know, at your worst and you need help, these will really come in handy. So just make sure you stack them. use them in the really tricky rooms, especially on the orange health bar malformed enemies. They come in useful for them as well. But yeah, that's just a little bit about those. So the environments and the general rooms in the tower will be linked to what we spoke about in the map as well, in the basic part. It kind of ties in. So you need to use your environment to your advantage, and that might be using walls for cover for just a second, if there's like lasers firing at you, or using grapple points to get yourself out of tricky situations. So using the map and the environment go kind of hand in hand. You know, I would start memorizing rooms and memorizing like grapple points, and it will just, obviously the more you play it, the more it will just become second nature. Definitely use them to your gain, because they're there to get you out of troubling times, you know, bad situations where you feel a little bit overwhelmed, and you know, they're good just to kind of like reset as well, I suppose, because if everything's going against you, you can kind of like restart and go again. Like you can find yourself again, and you know, if you're being bogged down by enemies, you can like, okay, I've got a bit of breathing room now, I'm in control, let's go again, and then you know, you'll feel less overwhelmed. So yeah, definitely something to look out for, and definitely something that they've obviously put there, you know, in the rooms, in the maps, you know, for us to use. So start using them. So there are certain rooms during the tower which are a little bit larger. You'll see like the turrets, or maybe the smaller enemies are spotted in and around every single corner of the map. Best thing to do with these is, so you want to be heading like into the room, to the back where the corners are, and then slowly just like moving yourself towards the teleporter, just to make life easier, because they can be a bit of a pain in the ass. Because usually what I'll do is I'll spawn in, I'll just kill whatever's in front of me, and then usually there'll be like one silly turret right at the back, and I'm wasting my time on my multiplayer. I'm watching it go down just for one sodding enemy. So yeah, don't make that mistake. Spawn in, wake yourself from the back to the front, and you'll just get to the teleporter faster, just make your life easier. So sometimes you'll spawn into rooms where the smaller enemies, such as like the bats, or like those little flowy egg things, the blue ones that can do the laser or the ring attacks, or even sometimes with turrets as well. What you'll find is that you'll see like an aura for like a severed, or the turtles, etc., and they'll spawn in after a certain amount of time. So best thing to do with these is, because what I see a lot of people doing is clearing out the room, and then they're just waiting for the larger enemies to spawn. So this is a disadvantage, because you're clearing out the room, yes, faster, yes, but you're also then leaving time for your multiplier to go down, because obviously the larger enemies haven't spawned, and they do take some time to spawn. So use this time to your advantage. Just make sure that you are just going around slowly, going one by one, and this obviously just waiting for the larger enemies to spawn in, just so you're not knocking your multiplier down further. Now, the last section we're going to be talking about will introduce more complex topics that'll really make you go above and beyond other players. So adding these to your skill set is really going to take you that extra mile. So we are going to be talking about the best weapons, the best traits, if it's manageable and if it's effective to use remapping, and how to really grind down and really get those melee kills in. So with the more advanced style of gameplay in Returnal, this is what you'll see like top players doing, and this will really give you an extra edge over other players as well, and really boost your score, help you progress in the leaderboard as well. But now we're going to be moving on to speaking about the weapons that you receive in the tower. We're going to be speaking about which ones are going to be in the lower category which ones are in the mid category and which ones are in the more higher range advanced category. So we're going to start with the basic one, the one that you start with in the tower, which is the sidearm. Now this gun is pretty decent with the right specs, which we'll be speaking about next. This gun probably used for the first maybe 1 to 3 phases. Next up is carbine. Again, this is like a low to mid-range gun. I don't recommend it for the tower personally. Like I said, it probably can get you to phase 5, and then from there you'll need a better weapon. The shotgun, don't really see a lot of people using that. That's a very lower tier gun. The Holoseeker is terrible, which is a shame because some of these weapons were really good in the story, such as the Holoseeker and the carbine, but now in the tower, it's funny that half the weapons I didn't use in the story, I now have to use for the tower. The Thermogenic, that's our only mid-range gun with the right specs. Again, it'll get you the distance to go for that mid score, but again, if you want a higher, bigger score, we want to be looking at these 5 bad boys. Now, I'm singling these 5 out in particular because they've all recorded big scores on the tower leaderboard. I'm not talking like top 1,000, I'm talking top 10. The first one is the Rockland Lobber. The second is the Coil Spine. The Pyro Shell, I would say, is probably the easiest out of the 5 to use, just because you can just keep pressing it or hold it down and it will deal damage. The Electropylon Driver is pretty fun, but again, it's very, very advanced weapon. The Dreadbound is probably the best gun for the tower. Again, it needs a lot of practice. I'd say the best thing to do with it is like spray a little bit, then move and spray again. Just because when you reach hostiles counter and hit, it can be a little bit daunting, and it can be a little bit, and it can get really silly with the orbs. So I'd say just spray and play with the Dreadbound. Just off the back of that as well, we're also going to be speaking about alt fires, the worst of the best. So at the bottom of the pile is the proximity mine. It's got average damage, but it is a little bit tricky to use. Next up is kill sight. Again, average damage. The point of kill sight is to aim for the weak spots on enemies. That's where you'll really maximize your damage output. Shock stream's okay. Again, it's got medium overall damage, but you've got to get really up close and personal with enemies. And then you've got the vertical and horizontal barrage, and they're pretty decent, but again, only just like medium output for damage. Now speaking about the top tier alt fires, so we've got Void Beam, that's really good. Doombringer, which can break shields. High damage, but as you're probably well aware, it does take a moment to charge. Then after that, we've got Tracker Swarm, really good high damage output. After that is Shield Breaker. Shield Breaker's got kind of medium to high. I'd say medium for non-shielded enemies and high for shielded enemies. And then we've got Blast Shield, and that's got a fantastic damage rate on that one, and it has the ability to break shields. And top of the pile would be the Tendril Pod, because that has damage over time, as well as the ability to break shields. Yeah, take that information and do with it as you will. So our next topic for discussion is weapon traits. A weapon is only as good as the level it is at and the traits provided with it. Usually you'll get 4 traits to go with the gun. Now these traits will come with different various levels. So the base level is 1, then 2, and then maxed out at 3. So we're going to be speaking about every single weapon, which ones are the most exclusive and the ones that you really want to be unlocking on each weapon that is going to take you to the next level, that is fantastic for the gun, that'll really make a difference in the tower. You know, certain traits that don't go together, it just will perform very badly. So we're going to start with the pistol. So we've got homing missile, which is very good. That's an exclusive. So exclusive ones is the ones that you want to really be looking out for, and it's the best traits for the gun. So homing missiles, we've got ricochet, we've got piercing, we've got sub-nose barrel. Serrated, that's an exclusive one, I'd say, just because of additional damage over time, just like when we come to speak about the Holoseeker. We've got shrapnel, that's an exclusive one. Burst fire, that's exclusive. We got charging shot and hit reload. I would say is another exclusive, because with that one you don't have to keep reloading all the time with successful hits. Moving on, next is the carbine. So we've got hyper accurate, which is pretty good. We've got armor piercing. We've got our first exclusive on high caliber. I hate this one, but a lot of people love it, which is rising pitch. I think it's god awful. Payline rounds, that's another exclusive trait. Critical hit is pretty decent. Hardened, that's an exclusive one, increases your protection. Accelerated and leech rounds, which is our last exclusive, which is very popular, which is successful hits may repair your integrity. Moving on to the Spitmile. Slug Shot, I'd say that's a pretty exclusive trait to get, which fires an additional high damage, high speed slug shot. We've got Rapid Spitter, which very much like the Thermogenic, it's just full auto mode with the shotgun. We've got Piercing Spit, Wide Mar, Acid Clouds. I'd say Narrow Mar's pretty good, because it just keeps it at a tighter spread. So that's an exclusive one that you want to look at. Critical, Stagger, Backlash, and finally the last exclusive being Explosive Spit, which projectiles explode on impact after a set distance. Moving on to the Pyro Shell. This has got quite a lot of exclusives. Personally, for the Pyro Shell, I don't like the Streamlined, which is increased fire rate. I always say this, I would rather have a gun that's slower but deals more damage than a fast gun that deals less damage. So when I'm looking at traits on a weapon, if there's more damage traits on there, then I'm taking it. That's all I'm looking for in a weapon. And that's all that you need to be looking for. However, secondary is Sticky is, Seeking Flares, Auxiliary Projectiles, and Simmering are all exclusives for the Pyro Shell. You want to stay clear of Bouncy. We've got Enlarged Chamber as well. And lastly, Anti-Grav isn't so bad, but I wouldn't class it as an exclusive trait. So after the Pyro Shell, next up is the Coal Spine. So this one has Adrenaline Discs. Exclusive would include Shattering Discs, Retarget, Splitting, Twin, Negating, and Enhanced Charged as well. So I'd say those will take priority. And also in there, not an exclusive, but you've also got Enlarged Chamber, all fire cooling. So next after that is going to be the Thermogenic. So this one's got some really good traits with it, such as the exclusives, such as the Thermite Rockets, the Tailfire, Replicator Hits, Full Auto, and Mega Rocket, as well as the Critical Rocket. The ones that are pretty standard, the Oblite Magnet, the easy to use, and Enlarged Chamber. Next is the EPD, also known as the Electropylon Driver. This one, because as we spoke about earlier, is a little bit more complex to use, is because it doesn't really have a lot of decent traits, which is a shame. It's got Protective Pylons, Blade Pulse, Silphium Extractor, Oblite Extractor, Blade Harmonizer, and Enlarged Chamber. But I'd say the exclusive for this one is Streamlined, Pylon Web, and the Finisher. Next up is the Rockland. So we've got the standard ones such as Bouncing, Trailing, Enlarge, and Protective. Where we've got exclusives such as Durable Rot, which increases the duration of the rot. Explosive, which obviously just explodes on impact. Caustic Rot, which does additional damage over time. And Portal Rot, which is very similar to the Polseeker's Portal Beam. So hostiles killed by the rot create a projectile firing portal. So coming to the last two, we've got Holoseeker, which does have some really good traits, but again is a very trash weapon, unfortunately. So the standard ones, you've got Oscillator, Phasing Rounds, but your exclusives are like Split Stream, you've got Waves, you've got Serrated Projectiles, you've got Shrapnel, Portal Beam, Retarget, and Portal Turret. So those ones you want to keep an eye out on. And the Dreadbound, finally, leaving the best to last. So the standard ones, you've got Oblite Generator, you've got Oblite Magnet, but the exclusive ones, like the bare minimum is Explosive and Expanding. You'll hear this all the time from players, is it needs to have Explosive and Expanding minimum. If you get at least one of them, with the rest of it exclusive, that's fair enough. But if you have both of them, then you're just in for a treat. You've got damage steal, you've got returning damage, expanding shards, and fall shards. So yeah, that's just a bit of background with every trait for every gun and which ones you just want to be prioritizing. On guard, students. So this is this next technique is probably the most advanced, but it's certainly the most useful and easiest concept that's been brought into the tower. You're implementing it is a totally different story, and we're talking about mid-air melees. Some players who just do the normal ground melees, if you just jump a melee, the difference in score and multiply bonus that it provides is crazy. For instance, just to give you an idea, at 100 multiplier, a small enemy will give you 250,000 points. Turrets, you're probably talking about 275,000, and larger enemies upwards and beyond. So there's many ways you can practice this. Obviously, the easiest would be just to repeat the tower over and over again, because I think like the first couple of phases, like 1 to 3, they purposefully leave like the bats and like the squid kind of egg enemies and the dogs, you know, just so you can start farming those mid-air melees. So just give you an idea as well for your multiplier. So a normal kill will make you multiplier go by 0.01. With a melee kill, mid-air melee, in fact, it's 0.03. Not only will it give you a boost to your score, but it will give you a boost to the multiplier as well, which just means you can get to 100 faster whilst getting a higher score. So you're killing two birds with one stone there. Another way to practice mid-air melees would be just to run through the story. Again, there's lots of small enemies during like phase, during biome 1 and biome 4. So you can easily just practice those in different scenarios. I know we covered it in the last video, but just practice memorizing and enemy patterns and enemy movement. There's ones that you'll see people constantly meleeing because they're easy. You'll have the mid ones, and then you've got the ones that you just you just leave because they're too dangerous. It's only now that I've started meleeing like Severed, so I'll get him down to a Tidge. And the good thing about the Dreadbound, you can whittle the health down to like the tiniest little health and then just go in for the melee kill. There's another strat for you. You're welcome. Practice the mid-air melees because they're going to make a difference to your score, a difference to your tactics and your overall strategy and the overall way you play the tower. And yeah, why wouldn't you want a bigger score and a faster multiplier? So definitely look into it. Practice, practice, practice. I'm sure you'll come out with your sword play looking so much better. Returnal is a tricky game, and it throws all sorts of crap at you. You need to make sure that when you run into the tower or the story mode, etc., that you're playing it on your own terms. One of the ways you can do that is by remapping your controller. One of the difficulties I have with the tower is that my biggest issue is the use of consumables and where they are on the controller. So I think that I've missed out on a lot of good opportunities to go higher with my score because I've had to take my hand off the controller and onto the D-pad to switch it and then activate it. So for me, what I've done to do to work around this is remap my controller. So this is what I'm currently working with. Everything pretty much is the same. The only thing I've done is swap left consumable to L1 and right consumable to R1. And then to use it, I've just got this button here. I mean, you can go through default if you want. If that's what you're comfortable with. Some people remap their controllers so they can have L1 dash and R1 melee. That's a very popular one because then you can do the DMJ, which is the dash melee jump, which provides you with a massive jump just to get to like teleporters faster and just to get out tricky situations faster as well. But if you are struggling, what I would do is map it a certain, you know, to your own certain preference. I would probably play in like intervals, just so, because with the tower it's all muscle memory, because you've played it 101 times, your muscles are obviously, if you're you know, swapping from dash from circle to L1, it's gonna be a little bit chaotic. I think it's something that you might want to look into if you are struggling with some of the controls, because some of them, like I say, are in very silly bindings as well. Yeah, that's for you. So sometimes you'll get to a crossroads such as this. You'll have the red dot to your left and the blue dot to your right. If you look out your window, so to speak, you can sort of plot your route and see what you're up against next, which will put you in a really good position, because if you are in full swing, you can kind of see the details of which ones are going to be the hard rooms, if there's a healing room up ahead, and you can plan your route that's going to suit your needs. So if you're in dire straits and you need shields and health, what's going to be coming next, if there's a full heal room or consumable room, if you need to take that chance, if you don't have any keys. So yeah, just a little bit of a tip there for you, just to plan your route a little bit better. So this is one of multiple safe rooms. Sometimes what you'll find is you'll come to this little section, and the first little path, this narrow corridor, you might have like one enemy, or in this case, as you can see, we've got a mob of bats. So once you've dealt with those, you'll go to the next platform, and usually you'll have the larger enemies spawning with the smaller ones as well, just to make your life easier, because it is a tricky section to get around, and there's a couple of, obviously it doesn't have any kind of like barriers, or it's quite open-ended. So what you can do is you can retreat back to the narrow corridor, can simply deal with the smaller enemies as they'll follow you. So you might have the squids in this case scenario that we do. You can use this to your advantage because they will follow you, and because it's a safe space, it's that, you know, that you're not being timed, so you don't have to worry about the multiplier or anything like that. You can just take your time, take them out. The larger enemies will stay on the other platform as well, which is good, so their attacks won't reach you. And once you've dealt with the mob, you can then zipline over and deal with the larger enemies without being too bogged down. So yeah, another quick tip there for you. So this is a very quick and easy one, primarily used for Algos. So as soon as you load in onto this platform, all you want to do is choose one of the statues here. So what I basically do is, as soon as Algos's health bar has loaded in, I'll fire my alt fire and just hide behind the statue, because the first, I think it's the 3 blasts and the 3 waves that he shoots at you, you can basically just easily defend yourself against these by hiding behind the statues. It's a little bit cheap, but it does the job and it's easy to do. So yeah, you're welcome. So we're just going to quickly gloss over the artifacts and how to manage these as well. So you'll pick these up slowly but surely throughout your run, and you will get to a point where you are full. What I tend to do as well is I tend to get a resonant shield as early as possible, and what I also try to do as well is try to get the most expensive ones. So when you have the decision where you have to choose between 2, I'll take the ones that will be most expensive. So when it comes to like a shop, I'll be left with, you know, the cheapest ones. So that's another tactic to keep in mind as well. When you do get full, you do need to start prioritizing which ones are going to help you. So for instance, like I'll get rid of like adrenaline ones, or resin enhancer as well if I need to. Start prioritizing your artifacts and look into which ones are going to help you later on in your run. So when you get to the halfway house, the room after you beat Algos, where you can get the full integrity heal, and you get the shop as well, you'll come across these like pillars and these statues as well, which you can shoot, and they're classed as breakables. Sometimes one of the enemies will spawn, so such as like the bats are the most prominent one. You also get it at the full heal house as well with the shields. So you do have to wait like a moment and they will spawn, and it's just like, this is like a freebie. So make sure you get your mid-air melee in there, make sure you get your extra points and your extra score. It doesn't spawn every time, it's just worth doing it and seeing if you can get an extra goodie. Overall, at the moment with the changes, it's a very love-hate and relationship with the tower at the moment, but it is still fun to go back to from time to time, because when everything does click, it is absolutely fantastic. It's good to also see new players join in, and soon we'll be getting even more as it's coming to PC soon. Anyway, I really hope this helps you in one way, shape or form. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out my Twitch where I do some tower runs occasionally. I also play indies and other shooters every Monday and Thursday, 8 o'clock UK time. Links will be posted in the description. See you in the next one, guys, and go out there and smash those personal bests.